Hello, this is Discrimination in Secondary Education, a workshop brought to you by Lane Vassallo, a future physical education teacher. In this workshop, we'll be going over how to identify and analyze discrimination in secondary education and what role literacy plays in doing so. Learners will be able to analyze and identify discrimination in their own content areas and address those issues with their own peers and students. How does literacy relate to this topic? Literacy affects every aspect of life in one way or another, especially since it's not strictly classified only to reading and writing anymore. How it relates specifically to this topic is through two main literacies: cultural literacy as well as critical literacy. Being culturally competent and literate and understanding other cultures at a base level can help you evaluate situations or aspects of the educational system / materials that may be inequitable and promote discrimination. That is where critical literacy comes into play. Because critical literacy entails being able to analyze something critically and understand what is going on. Below, I have a couple examples of what culturally as well as critically illiterate statements look like. So, inaccuracies in history books, such as referring to African American slaves as immigrants, implies that they chose to come here. In one of my resources that you'll see later in the slides, you'll be able to check that out yourself as well as the website. Schools with high concentrations of low income and minority students receive fewer instructional resources than others in the same district with higher income student bodies. So let's look at a critical analysis of this topic. So to explore my topic in a more critical sense, generally speaking, minority, lower class, or non-dominant groups of people suffer the most from discrimination in the educational system, and their voices and stories are often the ones that are silenced. About 90% of stories and books commonly used in public schools were written by white authors. Chapman, 2018. With the majority being men. This does not allow for the accurate representation of cultural differences, making misrepresentation of other cultures more prominent, such as I stated in my last slide as referring to slaves as immigrants. Because of this, we see a white, male-dominated educational culture that is being taught to students around America. How has media affected this topic? Media and digital literacy has greatly affected this topic because information is so accessible now, and with civil issues often being a forefront on most social media platforms, it's become a topic that is easier to access and find information on as well. But there are a lot of positives that come from this. One of the reasons why I was able to look into this topic in the first place was because of a social media post that I saw on Facebook at the beginning of the year on how history in schools is taught from a white lens, and how a lot of the times they'll sugarcoat things that make white history look bad. The positives are that we are more aware of certain social justice issues that we may not have been aware of or really thought of before due to it being on a continuous news feed. Social media also helps students feel more safe speaking out about issues of race and discrimination. On social media, students are sharing their experiences at predominantly white institutions, PWIs, calling for the end of the implicit and explicit racial biases that they face, and demanding accountability from administrators. Penna, 2020. Some negatives is there's a lot of misinformation out there and misuse of digital and media platforms, and that can lead to people writing off information in regards to inequality, especially in our educational system, as being false or extremist. How does this relate to cultural literacy? So, cultural literacy is one of the main literacies that comes into play with this topic, because understanding other cultures and how they have been represented and treated throughout history plays a huge role in how they are represented today. Understanding cultural literacies avoids scenarios being put into textbooks like, quote, some U.S. settlers brought slaves into Texas to help work the fields and do chores, end quote. Atwell, 2020. Where the use of chores downplays the fact that slavery was such a brutal practice. When you say, hey, these slaves came over here to do some chores and work in the fields, it doesn't sound all that horrible, when really it was. The lack of cultural literacy can lead to more bias and stereotypes, because painting an inaccurate picture of a social group can make it seem as though they are overreacting or reacting poorly to situation, hence gaslighting them. So if you don't know what gaslighting is, I added this little chart here on the screen. I'll go over it real quick. Gaslighting is making you question reality, convincing you that a problem isn't a problem. The reverse victim offender. It's lying even when there is proof. Projecting someone's own behavior on you. Telling you that you're imagining things. So, some multi-model examples. I have 3 different organizations that I found that help with this topic and try to help raise awareness and support for students that are going through discrimination and inequities in their schools. So the first one is Standing Up for Human Rights. This is a quote directly from their website. #FightRacism aims to foster a global culture of tolerance, equality, and anti-discrimination. Every day, each and every one of us can stand up against racial prejudice and intolerant attitudes. Bachelet, 2021. My second one was the Summer Search. So Summer Search is a service geared towards minority students, providing mentorship, summer experiences, and post-secondary education advising for those students. The third one is called World Trust, and basically they use artistic outreach such as films, videos, music, art, etc. to advance social justice and racial equity. So some connections and takeaways that I was able to come up with for this project. We all understand that there is a change to be had and that there is an issue in America with people understanding each other. A huge part of this is simply the fact that we are not educated on people who are different than us as individuals. We're unfamiliar with other cultures, but why is that? We as America are supposed to be the melting pot. It's because it isn't being taught to us where it needs to be in our schools. We are missing accurate information that doesn't downplay atrocities committed by one group or another, but honesty and transparency, even if it doesn't make us look the greatest. Being honest and teaching honesty, and then starting the conversation with our students is why things are the way they are in the first place. And those are the first steps to change. Realizing that we aren't the only people on this planet, and what we believe to be our narrative may not always be what is true. I'll quote, "When we instruct our children, We should be instructing them in truth. End quote. Kendi, 2020. When we can understand and accept and not downplay the hurts of others and diversify our stories, we can grow and heal and become unified as students, as teachers, and as a nation, and put an end to discrimination. So there's a few extra learning resources that I found while creating this workshop. The first one is an article that I used for the presentation that really dives in and gives many more examples of what information is actually out there in our textbooks, especially in regards to African American history. Just a lot of clips from textbooks and stuff like that that really downplay or misrepresent what actually occurred, when African American slaves were brought over here to America, as well as things that are downplayed in just general culture in terms of, social, civil rights and things like that. My second resource explores more of the equity issues that come with being a school in a lower income area of a district, and the differences in funding and support that it may receive opposed to a school in the same district in a higher income area. The final resource that I provided was it explores the color and sexual differences with statistics related to authors of a good majority of textbooks that are used in school, and explores how that affects the representation of different cultures. And finally, I have my resource page. So these are the resources that I used for this project. Feel free to go through them, look through them. They are all very good, and they all have a lot of good information for this project if you'd like to learn more. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you were able to learn something, and have a great evening. Bye-bye.